Okay, we're pulling the questions. All right, we're gonna start now with drawing the. We're gonna draw the first question out of this jar. Go ahead, draw. And it's gonna go to Ron Wright. Number one. Who's number one? Ron Wright. Ron Wright.
Okay. Regarding the constitutional requirements stated in Article 4, Section 4, state your position on border security and what steps you will take to ensure implementation.
Voter security. First, I don't have a problem with requiring people to have an ID before they vote. And I think that should be a national requirement. However, it's clear that I need to hold it close?
No, hold it more like this.
Okay.
The mic is here on the...
Got it. Okay, thank you very much. No, we've got to have voter security, but...
Border.
Border? I thought you said voter.
Border.
All right, can I borrow a hearing aid, please? Boy, you know what, that's an even easier question. Look, I'm for the wall. I'm for what Trump wants to do down there on the border. We've got to stop the flow. I'm opposed to amnesty. This issue's been bouncing around most of my entire life, and it's got to stop. And I'm not going to apologize or get on the defensive because I love my country and I want her laws enforced. We've got to enforce the existing laws, and we've got to make sure that the people that we do let into the country are people that have been vetted. Whether we like it or not, and the left doesn't even want to admit it, immigration is a national security issue. And that makes border security a national security issue. And we have the right, as all nations do, to control who comes into our country. Just as we would respect that right that any country would have. And, you know, I think it's a dangerous thing when you have people that come across the border like they have for decades, and we don't know who they are, we don't know where they are, and we can't go on doing that. So I'm for border control, I'm for the wall, I'm opposed, and I'm out of time. Thank you.
1 minute, right?
1 minute.
You need the question repeated?
No, I'm fine. The border security. In the news today, we hear a lot about DACA and Dreamers, but before we do anything, we need to secure the border. We need to fund border security. We need to build a wall. We need to bring in all the technology to bear we have to know who's coming into this country, why they're here. And the ones that are here illegally and committing crimes need to be deported immediately. But the main issue, again, is just securing the border, know what they're doing here. It's also a national security issue. It's a national security issue. And it's something, as a nation, we need to know, protect our borders and protect our sovereignty. So, thank you.
Article 4, Section 4 deals with both immigration and immigrants and the people we bring in. The problem is we have laws already, but they're ignored. They're used as a political football so that liberals can call us racist, which I was called earlier today because I dared utter anything negative about Obama. We have to stop this political correctness. Other countries have laws. We don't get upset when we visit there. And for them to continue to say they're in the shadows is a complete farce. They're in our face. They're telling us that we need to fly their flag. They have not even attempted to get citizenship here. I am all for enforcing our laws. Let's stop making this a political football.
Now we're gonna, if you want 30 seconds more to finalize your comment on it across the board, 1, 2, and 3.
Just to finish the thought, I'm opposed to amnesty, and I'm opposed to the lottery system they have. and chain migration. We've got to take control of the border and immigration in the United States.
I'm also against chain migration. The lottery system is important. We need to bring in immigrants. We need to bring people that bring skills that can benefit our economy. We just don't need to bring people that are related to other people. Thank you.
You do not get to break into my home any more than you do my country. Enough is enough on this issue. We need to enforce the laws we have, and we do not have to deport. If you cannot get a job and cannot get benefits, you will go home.
Question number 2. This is to Mr. Dubberly. Dubberly.
I've been called worse.
Over time, the legislative, judicial, and executive branches have failed to act as a check and balance on each other. This is a two-part question. Are people losing their freedoms due to this failure? And how can Congress check an out-of-control judicial branch?
So
2 minutes.
Yes, for the first part of the question, yes, they're losing their freedoms. When we have can you hear me now? All right. To the first part of the question, yes, they are losing their freedoms. When we have overactive judges that don't follow the Constitution, that exceed their statutory authority, and especially in regards to like the 14th Amendment, where they use the liberty to take away, define privacy and go into our lives and exceed the authority of the Constitution. And what was the second part of the question? I apologize.
How can Congress check the out-of-control judicial branch?
Sure. So, well, first, Congress is the one that votes on the judges, and that the president brings to bear. And we need, whether they're brought up in committee and they're approved by Congress, we need to screen the judges, find out what they stand for. And luckily, under President Trump, we've been bringing in more conservative judges. But as the oversight position within Congress, we need to screen the federal appointees. Yeah, and that's the best way to vote on them and screen the bad ones out.
Yes, it is gravely dangerous to our freedom. But the problem is we also have representatives that are not standing up to it. They're not calling it out because they're all up there making deals. They're having their little slush funds. They've got to protect each other's secrets. That's why the establishment makes sure that they get someone there to replace them that will help keep those secrets. What can we do? We can do the same thing we're doing on the state level. You just expose it each and every time. And if the media won't cover it, like they won't cover a lot of things that doesn't serve their interest, then you just keep saying it. You go on social media, you contact your constituents, and you let them know this is what they're doing. The whole play along to get along has to end. No career politicians.
Thank you. The problem's actually larger than the judiciary because for too long, Congress has given too much power over to the president, the states have given too much power over to the federal government, and all of that needs to change. As far as the judiciary is concerned, though, Congress should use its power of investigation and impeachment and not be afraid to impeach these judges to get them in line.
Seconds for a final comment.
We have to start standing up. We cannot stay silent on this stuff. And we also have to do it at a local level. When you have city council members, when you have state reps that do the same thing, stand up for your freedom. Do not allow them to bully you anymore.
We done?
All right, question number 3 will be for Deborah. We can all agree Obamacare is a step too far. As a representative in Washington, what are your specific thoughts for real health care reform?
The free market is the best answer. I've discussed this with several people today. The reason that Obamacare was even there is because it's one more thing that Congress sees away, that they get kickbacks, they get money from, that they scare people with. Oh my gosh, your grandmother's going to be, driven off that cliff and not get her prescriptions? Doctors care for people, and they take care of them. One of the things that I want to see done is that I want doctors to get deductions for pro bono work. Just like an attorney, just like anybody else. You'd be amazed how many times doctors do free medical care now. Allow the free market to take this over. It is just fraud beyond belief. We knew that from the beginning, but we didn't fight hard enough. We truly didn't. You didn't hear them constantly complaining, oh, we've got this, we've got that. They still tried to sell the issue and then pretend they were fighting it. When they got in office, was one of the first things Joe did was to vote against that? Of course not. They keep pretending to fight for us so they can say, hey, I tried. But no, they haven't. We need people that aren't afraid, that will get up there and do it and are not beholding and that are not career politicians.
I remember when that was done up there, they railroaded that thing right through Congress without a single Republican vote. And what needs to happen now is for Republicans to stand up and say no and vote to repeal it and replace it with something that all of us can agree is a better system. We have did have one of the finest healthcare systems in the world. We don't need to tinker with that. There are things we can do in terms of pharmaceuticals and research and all of that that can play into that. But the first thing we got to do is have the courage to vote to repeal it entirely.
This is a constitutional forum, and first thing I bring up is nowhere in the Constitution does it say that Congress is supposed to run healthcare. So, obviously, I'm for 100% repeal. Privatization should be to the states and local. We haven't had that in a long time, so I think that's a pretty easy one.
Final comment.
We can no longer allow people to go to Washington to serve themselves and to serve Washington. It must be taken back from the people. And I am so tired of them creating drama and creating situations so that they can halfway fix it and then tell us we should be grateful for their minimal efforts. We have to take power back.
One thing I want to remind you of is you have two houses up there, and there's a lot we can get done in the House that gets stymied in the Senate. And, you know, when Sam Rayburn was Speaker, a young Democrat congressman came to him, just elected, wanted to know which Republicans, you know, that he needed to take out. And Rayburn glared at him and said, young man, on the floor of the House, the Republicans are not our enemy and we're not theirs. The enemy's the Senate. That hasn't changed, folks. The United States Senate, if it were more like the Texas Senate, we'd all be in a lot better shape.
Okay, this is question 4. Sorry. As a member of the House of Representatives, what is your role regarding the high-speed rail project in CD6?
Well, I think my role would be to stop it. There's no way that rail system needs to go in with power of eminent domain. I think all of us kind of agree on that. All of us want that to be, it's private, and if they can't make that system work for everybody, to benefit everybody, which they can't, they need to put it somewhere else. But no to the bullet train.
I'm also against the train, but as congressmen, what we can do is not fund it through the infrastructure plan. I heard that there was $13 billion, I believe, earmarked for it. Take that away. If without that, it's not going to be self-sustainable and they won't get funding. Also, in regards to eminent domain, it should never be used, especially for a foreign entity, let alone a private sector company, for the general good. So, yeah.
It's not enough to deny them any federal funds. We can also not guarantee them any federal loans, because I can assure you, once they called me and tried to talk me into it, I know that they had support, even though people say, oh, eminent domain. It's easy for them to say whenever they've actually done it in the city of Arlington for a private industry. But what they will do is that they will then go bankrupt after they've paid themselves, and then they'll go, oh my gosh, we can't just leave it unfinished. Yes, you can. If you're being beaten and you haven't finished beating that person, you can stop at any point. And we do not need that whatsoever. And I told them, if you want to do this, why don't you give the landowners part of the company? If you're guaranteeing it's going to be this profitable, put your money where your mouth is.
Okay, all right, 30 seconds. I just want to say I don't see how it's going to make any money, and I have a distinct feeling in the near future they're going to say they're going to want to do a temporary tax to help fund it, and I've never seen a temporary tax. So not only am I against this train, I'm scared of it. So
It'll be one more scam. Being from Arlington and having to deal with them taking people's homes for a private company for a stadium, this is a very sensitive issue to me, and we darn sure do not need Joe's left hand up there finding another way to word it and allow it.
me.
It's kind of a different feeling being the questionnaire instead of the questionee.
Just make it easy.
Oh no, I contributed to some of these questions, believe me, and some of the ones I contributed I thought were really good ones. They didn't put them in for some reason. All right. Okay. State your position regarding the just enacted Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. Is it enough, or would you offer your own plan? If so, what is it?
Sure. Well, I supported the tax cuts because we need as many tax cuts as we can get. That said, the job's not done. I would rate it about a B+. As long as something as the death tax is still here, there's a lot of people in the rural areas of this district that have farms. And the farmers and the ranchers are the ones that are going to be most affected by the taxes that are still on the books. Also, I saw the tax cut as step one. We have a $20 trillion debt in this country. That's become a national security issue. So step two is we need to start doing spending cuts. We need to look across the board, ask the tough questions, and bring tough answers. Because the tax cut's good, but unless we don't cut spending, we're going to be in a lot of trouble really quickly.
It was supposed to be tax reform. For far too long, we have career politicians that have weaponized agencies that they use against people that dare question them. And that's what this has become. We did not have reform. We were given token credits with our money. That's our money that's sent up there. So yes, it was a start, and at least they got to say we did something, but it is not enough. And I am tired of accepting just little tokens back from my money. So what I would do, cuts are needed desperately. One of my strengths is infrastructure and making sure it comes in on time and on budget. So I would start looking at reducing regulations, reducing taxes as far as we can, because that's always been successful, and looking at reworking the agencies that have been weaponized.
The tax cut bill was a good bill, but it was a good start and not a good finish. We need to do more. We need to do away with the graduated tax system we have today and go to a flat tax or a consumption tax and do away with what we've got. Because as long as we have that system in place, it's never going to be fair to everybody, and they're never going to stop tinkering with it. So we need that desperately. We need a balanced budget amendment. We need to, what happened last week, a couple of days ago, is an outrage. That budget bill that they passed was, it's terrible. And I would have voted no. I would have stood up and I would have said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to raise the debt limits anymore. We're not going to do away with sequestration or any of that. We've got to get our financial house in order, and we've got to do it in a responsible way and have people up there with the courage to say no.
I just want to be clear, on the bill they just passed last week, there's not even debt limits. They just left it open. They gave Congress the ability to pass as much as they want. They can pass as many bills and enact as many expenditures as they deem. So that's what's really scary about last week's bill, is there is no ceiling.
I agree that we need people with the courage to say no. We also need people with the courage to stand up when abuse is happening. We don't need anyone who turns a blind eye to women being sexually harassed at more than one boss. And just looking at how we are being treated as the taxpayers and as voters, we need to take that power back.
All right, this is question number 6 and the last one for this panel. President Trump wants trillions of dollars to improve America's infrastructure. 3-part question. Do you agree with his plan? That's the easy one. Where should money for infrastructure improvements come from? And would you favor a small gas tax increase to pay for road infrastructure?
I'll take the last portion of that first. No, I would not. They're always wanting to tax us, and it never goes away. And they're always telling us how we need it. As an architect and an engineer and a contractor, infrastructure is my area. I'm not allowed to be over budget. I'm not allowed to be beyond schedule. Yet we just accept that they're constantly twice what they originally scheduled on budget and on time. And they're not even overseeing it. The congestion on the roads, a lot of that is based on constant construction. Well, I can tell you right now, if it was built right the first time, it would not have to be constantly replaced. Have you ever noticed that it's always an election time when we need more roads, we need more everything? They ignored it prior to that. But then they want to offer us something back with our own money. I don't agree with Trump's $1.5 trillion budget. I want to see it. I want to go through it all. I don't want this one more thing where they're promising each other stuff just for votes. So no, I would not be in favor of that until I reviewed it all, and then we'll see what is really needed. We have plenty of tax revenue, but we also have a spending problem. It's like crack to these career politicians. They just never stop. It's constantly give them more, give them more, give them more. And then they pretend as if what they've given us is generosity from their own pockets. It's our money. I want the power back.
There's no question that infrastructure has to be addressed. It's been ignored for too long, but it's got to be paid for without going further in debt. I'm totally opposed to that. I want to go to Washington and say no. I'll stand up to the leadership. I'll say no to more debt, no to raising the debt limit. Congress has to set priorities. That's why we send them up there. And the infrastructure has to fit into those priorities. I'm all for doing it, but they got to pay for it, not raise the debt any further.
Infrastructure in North Texas has generally been a bipartisan issue, and we definitely need additions and updates done to our interstate system. That said, I don't know how we're going to afford $1.5 trillion when we're already $20 trillion in debt. They're almost raising the debt 10%. We're having trouble paying interest on the debt. That said, we definitely need to do something. We need to figure out a way to do it. But it's not just money. Throwing money at the issue doesn't work. There's ways we can be efficient. President Trump just this last year streamlined where when we build highways, it used to take over 200 pieces of paper and over 2 years, I believe, just to get started. And now they've got it under 20 pages and 6 months. And that saves millions of dollars. There's different things we can do besides throwing money at it. Also, we need to be very prudent and look at every little line item in that budget. When there's $1.5 trillion, you can't tell me there's not going to be any pork in that thing. So,
There's nobody of this group right here that's going to tell you that they're going to go up there and say yes to everything and they're going to play along to get along. So I ask you to check their records. Check and see if they've spoken out against those who have given our money away. Check and see if they voted for eminent domain. Check and see if they've tried to force the rail and buses down voters' throats and how many times they've increased taxes. Don't accept the hype that you will get here when they can't be honest. Check their record.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Class is dismissed. Thank you all.
That's the end of the first